Hey, I'm Gary Takacs. I wanted to share 3 quick metrics that you can use in your practice to measure your performance. I've always said that the numbers never lie. People do. Now, I don't mean that in a cynical way, but sometimes we make decisions in the practice based on opinions or anecdotal evidence, but the data never lies. And doctors, I want you to start making decisions in your practice based on the data. I'm going to share 3 metrics that I want to encourage you to start using in your practice to measure your performance. Number 1, this is a fun one. One of the things I notice in practices, in world-class practices, is they often end the day with more production than they began the day with. You know, think about that. Most practices, they show up in the morning. In our case, we start at 7 in the morning. So we show up at 6:45 for our morning huddle, and we've got a certain amount of production on the schedule. World-class practices, when they get to the end of the day, in our case that's 4 o'clock, world-class practices end the day with more production than they started with. Okay, how does that happen? Well, that happens by adding in opportunities. For example, it might be an emergency patient, it might be an existing patient where we expand some treatment, some necessary treatment, but world-class practices end the day with more production than they started with. So here's a metric I want you to start using. Shoot for 80% of the time, 4 out of 5 days. I want you to end the day with more production than you started with. Now you're going to have to develop a culture in your team, kind of a can-do culture. And doctor, that's up to you to lead that, to provide that leadership, to provide a can-do culture in your practice, to finish the day with more production than you started. And by the way, it's not about the numbers. It's about taking care of more patients. It's about taking care of their necessary dentistry. So frame this as you're developing your culture, frame this around helping more patients. The numbers are a byproduct of that. The second metric I want to encourage you to start measuring is your hygiene production as a function of total office production. Again, in a world-class practice, hygiene production accounts for about 33%, about 1/3 of your production. So doctors, start to look at your hygiene production as a function of your total office production. And ideally, I'd like to see that be about a 1/3. So start by measuring that. Once you measure that, that'll give you a good baseline for what level of improvement you need to do to raise that up to 1/3 of your total production. The reason why this is important is I'm such a believer. Yeah, I was fortunate. I had a wonderful mentor, Dr. Omar Reed. Dr. Reed taught me that hygiene is the backbone of a successful general practice. The more patients you have engaged in hygiene, the stronger your practice is. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it? So doctor, look to build the hygiene production as a function of your total office production. The third metric I want you to start to measure is another one that I'm really fond of, and that is the number of insurance claims you have outstanding 30 days or older. Number of insurance claims you have outstanding 30 days or older. Ideally, for a solo doctor practice, now I'm going to be tough on this one, but ideally, I want that to be 20 or fewer claims more than 30 days past due. 20 or fewer claims. Now that's tough. But I can point to offices all over the country that are doing it. So you may have heard the saying, if it's been done before, it must be possible. So it is possible. But it's going to take a dedicated team member who has ownership of that particular responsibility. We call our insurance champion. I love to use the word champion. No one wants another job, but everyone likes to be referred to as a champion. So if you haven't already done this, doctor, designate one of your team members as your insurance champion and give her the project of having no more than 20 claims, for a solo doctor, no more than 20 claims aged 30 days or more. And what it's going to take is follow up and pushing those claims through the adjudication process with the insurance companies. Well, I hope these 3 metrics are helpful to you. Here's to you developing your thriving practice. Hey, if you'd like more information about how to develop a thriving practice, please tune into my Thriving Dentist Show. It's a podcast. We air it every Wednesday. You can find it on iTunes. If you happen to be an Android person, you can find it on Stitcher Radio or any of your podcast directories of choice, called The Thriving Dentist Show. We'd love to have you as a listener.